and they were built too far ahead of actual demand. The result was a bubble that left heavy losses to investors and led to poor management practices. By contrast, as Y tenets, the lines in the Midwest and East, supported by a very large population base, fostered farming industry and mining while generating steady profits and receiving few government benefits. 165.
Yes, did find few more, like always. This Chinese railroad workers. Let's find it. History of Chinese American. Okay, we can do that. The nitroglycerin. Yes, you use it to blow railroads. Then the Santa Fe.
Tom.
Northern Pacific. Northern Pacific Railway. But that's many days of work, many days of reading. Then Great Northern.
Along the Canada-US border, the Union Pacific / Central Pacific in.
Duplicates Great Northern Railway. Then Santa Fe. If I can find it. Panic. That's a stock market. Many railroads got bankrupt. Should maybe read about that. Duplicates. Panic. That's like in the 30s. The Black Friday. The stock market is crashing. Yes, I just need Santa Fe. I cannot find it, but probably more easy. I'll take my keyboard. Santa Fe Railroad.
And the Southern Pacific. All but.
And Southern Pacific. I cannot say that. Pacific. Northern, Great Northern, Central Pacific. Santa Fe I need my keyboard. Santa Fe Railway. Yes, that's the way there. Then need one more. The Southern Pacific. Central duplicates. The Southern Pacific Railroads. Southern Pacific Transportation Company. So that's many days. Nitroglycerin, China's Panic, Northern Pacific, Great Northern, Santa Fe, Central Pacific, Southern Pacific, Union Pacific, Pacific Railroads. Yes, but let's continue. We have like 10 minutes left because I like to watch the Danish news 9 p.m.
Migration after the Civil War. Emigrants crossing the plains. 1872 shows settlers crossing the Great Plains. By F.O.C. Dolly and engraved by H.B. Hall. After the Civil War, many from the East Coast and Europe were lured west by reports from relatives and by extensive advertising campaigns promising the best prairie lands, low prices, large discounts for cash, and better terms than ever. The new railroads provided the opportunity for migrants to go out and take a look, with special family tickets, the cost of which could be applied to land purchases offered by the railroads. Farming the plains was indeed more difficult than back east. Water management was more critical, lightning fires were more prevalent, the weather was more extreme, rainfall was less predictable. 166. The fearful stayed home. The actual migrants looked beyond fears of the unknown. Their chief motivation to move west was to find a better economic life than the one they had. Farmers sought larger, cheaper, and more fertile land. Merchants and tradesmen sought new customers and new leadership opportunities. Laborers wanted higher paying work and better conditions. As settlers moved west, they had to face challenges along the way, such as the lack of wood for housing, bad weather like blizzards and droughts, and fearsome tornadoes. 167. In the treeless prairies, homesteaders built sod houses. One of the greatest plagues that hit the homesteaders was the 1874 locust plague, which devastated the Great Plains. 168. These challenges hardened these settlers in taming the frontier. 169. Alaska Purchase. After Russia's defeat in the Crimean War, Tsar Alexander II of Russia decided to sell the Russian-American territory of Alaska to the United States. The decision was motivated in part by a need for money and in part a recognition amongst the Russian state that Britain could easily capture Alaska in any future conflicts between the two nations. U.S. Secretary of State William Seward negotiated with the Russians to acquire the tremendous land mass of Alaska, an area roughly 1/5 the size of the rest of the United States. On March 30, 1867, the U.S. purchased the territory from the Russians for $7.2 million, $118 million in today's dollars. The transfer ceremony was completed in Sikka on the 18th of October, 1867, as Russian soldiers handed over the territory to the United States Army. Critics at the time decried the purchase as Swedes' folly, reasoning that there were no natural resources in the new territory and no one can be bothered to live in such a cold, icy climate. Although the development and settlement of Alaska grew slowly, the discovery of gold fields during the Klondike Gold Rush in 1896, Nome Gold Rush in 1898, and Fairbanks Gold Rush in 1902 brought thousands of miners into the territory, thus propelling Alaska's prosperity for decades to come. Major oil discoveries in the late 20th century made the state rich. 170, Oklahoma Land Rush. In 1889, Washington opened 2 million acres, 8,100 square kilometers, of unoccupied lands in the Oklahoma Territory. On the 22nd of April, over 100,000 settlers and cattlemen, known as boomers, 171, lined up at the border, and when the Army's guns and bugles giving the signal, began a mad dash to stake their claims in the land run of 1889. A witness wrote, "The horsemen had the best of it from the start. It was a fine race for a few minutes, but soon the riders began to spread out like a fan, and by the time they reached the horizon they were scattered about as far as the eye could see. 172, in a single day, the towns of Oklahoma City, Norman, and Guthrie came into existence. In the same manner, millions of acres of additional land were opened up and settled in the following 4 years. 173.
Yes, let's
Tom.
read this land run.
A witness wrote, "The horsemen had
And
the
there was
best of
two
it from the
more
start.
gold rush.
It was a fine race for a few.
Duplicates land rush. Then this Norme, I have the Klondike Gold
In
Rush, I need this one.
1898,
The Norme Gold Rush and Fairbanks Gold Rush. I have the Klondike Gold Rush. Duplicate. I not see so well because I have my reading glasses. Norme Gold Rush. Then final one.
Tom. In 1902 brought
Fairbanks
thousands of
Gold
miners.
Rush. So that's many days of reading. Super good. Now I have to write it down and download, but I do that after I watch the news and Danish television. Yes, let's read one more page.
Indian Wars. Sioux Chief Sitting Bull, Crow Chief Plenty Coups. Indian wars have occurred throughout the United States, though the conflicts are generally separated into two categories: the Indian Wars east of Mississippi River and the Indian Wars west of the Mississippi. The U.S. Bureau of the Census, 1894, provided an estimate of deaths in Indian Wars under the government of the United States, shave being more than 40 in number. They have cost the lives of about 19,000 white men, women and children, including those killed in individual combats, and the lives of about 30,000 Indians. The actual number of killed and wounded Indians must be very much higher than the given. 50% additional would be a safe estimate. 174. Historian Russell Thornton estimates that from 1800 to 1890, the native population declined from 600,000 to as few as 250,000. The depopulation was principally caused by disease as well as warfare. Many tribes in Texas, such as the Karankawan, Akokisa, Bidgie and others, were extinguished due to conflicts with Texan settlers. 175. The rapid depopulation of the Native Americans after the Civil War alarmed the U.S. government, and the Doolittle Committee was formed to investigate the causes as well as provide recommendations for preserving the population. 176, 177. The solutions presented by the committee, such as the establishment of the 5 boards of inspection to prevent native abuses, had little effect as large western migration commenced. 178. Indian Wars east of the Mississippi. The Trail of Tears. The expansion of migration into the southeastern United States in the 1820s to the 1830s forced the federal government to deal with the Indian question. The natives were under federal control but were independent of state governments. State legislatures and state judges had no authority on their lands, and the states demanded control. Politically, the new Democratic Party of President Andrew Jackson demanded the removal of the natives out of the southeastern states to new lands in the West, while the Whig Party and the Protestant churches were opposed to removal. The Jacksonian democracy proved irresistible, as it won the presidential elections of 1828, 1832, and 1836. By 1837 the Indian removal policy began, to implement an act of Congress signed by Andrew Jackson in 1830. Many historians have sharply attacked Jackson. 179. The 1830 law theoretically provided for voluntary removal and had safeguards for the rights of natives. But in reality, the removal was involuntary, brutal and ignored safeguards. 180. Jackson justified his actions by stating that natives had neither the intelligence, the industry, the moral habits, nor the desire of improvements. 181. The forced march of about 20 tribes included the 5 civilized tribes, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole. To motivate natives reluctant to move, the federal government also promised rifles, blankets, tobacco, and cash. By 1835 the Cherokee, the last native nation in the South, had signed the removal treaty and relocated to Oklahoma. All the tribes were given new land in the Indian.
Yes, I have to stop there because the video splits in about 1 minute. But let's close this postneck. And I have it on my lead list. But let's keep the moon open. That's just to close so I don't have so my computer not. I like to read the moon. We'll continue after this, but we have the Danish news in just 5-6 minutes. And I will download all this many, like more or less, I don't know how many. It's 27. I will download all this, but not now. Then I will add it to my read lists. Some there and some somewhere else. I think the railroads need to go there, but I'll do that when I'm finished with Danish news. Just got 30 seconds. Let's drink some cola. Then I will watch the Danish news. So then I will charge the camcorder and continue, but I have to stop the video now. I don't have time to put the cola